Welcome everybody, this is Matt Monarch with the Raw Food World TV show, and today's video is probably one of the most important videos I've ever done in my career. Now, just recently I did 2 other videos on how to heal from disease naturally. And the first one was how to make dietary changes in order to be healthy and heal from disease, like many of the health food institutes do, and naturopathic doctors and nutritionists. The second one was more about nourishment and superfoods, on how to make sure you're not deficient in getting everything your body needs. And today, we're going to talk about how to heal from disease spiritually, which is by far the most important out of all 3. You could almost disregard the first 2. Well, I wouldn't disregard them completely, but this is what I feel is extremely critical. I'm estimating that this video is going to be over an hour long. And I'm going to be discussing everything in steps to where at the very end it's a build up to where it's just like, boom. So at first it might sound a little bit confusing. And also I'd like to share, some people might start right off the bat to think this is new age. And I'm going to tell you right now that it's not. And I recommend that as you hear me talking about focus work and stuff like this, to stick around, and by the time we are halfway done with this video, you will definitely see that this is not a new agey thing. So sit back and enjoy. This is going to be a fun and wild ride. Let's do this. So this one girl came to me recently. She had breast cancer and she wanted to heal from this disease. And this girl was thin and she didn't eat a 100% whole foods diet, but she was pretty healthy. I can sense this. And she comes to me and she's like, Matt, I've got breast cancer. Can you help me? What can I do? And to be honest with you, I know this girl pretty well, and I knew what was going on in her relationship, and it wasn't the best situation. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, you know, we can give you enzymes, you could do enemas, you can eliminate these few things from your diet and so on. And I'm explaining everything to her as she's sitting right in front of me. And then I'm like, but you know what? There's something else I feel is a lot more important, and I kind of see what's going on, but it's really none of my business. I'm sorry, I shouldn't even have pried there. And she's like, what? Tell me. She was like ready for change. She wants to heal. And I'm like, no, it's none of my business. She's like, no, tell me, I want to know. So I was like, okay. Well, I can sense, I'm like, don't worry about this. Most other people won't notice this, but I can sense like what's going on in your relationship. I knew that like this guy wasn't treating her well, and that he was actually cheating on him. And when I started to mention this, all of a sudden, she just broke out crying, and all of a sudden fell on my shoulder, and I'm just sitting there like, whoa. For 5 minutes, this woman was crying on my shoulder, and when she finally finished, she lifted her head up, and she was a completely different woman. 100%, she was different. She wasn't even the same anymore. And I could just see it in her eyes. She was just looking like this, like, ready to go, just like grateful, thank you. So the next thing I heard was that she broke up with her husband, and she came and told me that she no longer had breast cancer, and she didn't do any dietary changes or anything like this. So there was someone who was cheating on her and continually treated her bad, and then when she eliminated the issue, her breast cancer went away. Now, in this situation, the physical aspects of healing that we've talked about in the other videos weren't necessarily needed, but for someone who's on a poor lifestyle, it may be needed. And it also helps for spiritual matters too, in some sort of aspect. But the spiritual aspects is probably the most important thing in healing from disease. So the big question of the day is, how do we do this? Now, what I'm about to discuss with you, we've talked about before in previous videos, and you might think to yourself, oh, I've heard this before from you, okay. But this is just the beginning of the video, and it's going to build up. People who have seen me speak in person, I've done a spiritual talk many times, there's going to be a lot of similar things here, but we're going to go a lot deeper because there's a lot of evolution going on all the time also, and new insights that I like to share. So how do we heal from disease spiritually? One of the #1 things that we can do is focus, doing focus work. And how do we do this? Well, many of us may be in a bad relationship, or maybe we're not treated well. Or maybe we have a family member or friend who continually walks all over our boundaries. For example, maybe they come over unannounced, they walk in your house without knocking, they sit on your couch, and then they just start eating your food without asking. And it almost feels like we're being taken advantage of, and it doesn't feel really good. Or maybe you've been physically abused or emotionally abused. Regardless, whatever it is, we're here on planet Earth, and a lot of us have spiritual and emotional issues, and they are painful. It's ow inside of our being. It's not like a physical cut ow. It's something that's it's probably even more painful than that. And because of how painful it is, we never really want to face it or look at it because we'd rather just avoid it. And so what happens is many of us, we go to work, we work 8 hours a day, and then we come home from work and we don't want to look at the garbage that we have inside. So what we'll do is we'll go watch TV for hours on end. We'll go on the computer, scroll on Facebook for hours looking for all the different posts, and then all of a sudden you see a video that's kind of like emotionally uplifting and it gives you these tingly vibrations and you feel good and all these different things. You're playing with friends, you're communicating with everybody, and you're like in this other world focusing right up directly at the computer. But we're not looking at the ow that is going on right here. This is like the emotional garbage. We'd rather be in another reality which is not our own, can be the computer, and stare at that. Not that I'm saying that it's not fun to watch these videos or have fun on the computer with your friends, but we never take out time to do the spiritual work in order to heal. And this is like the root of the disease, is this emotional garbage behind the physical manifesting ailments. So in order to heal, what we got to do is do less of that where we're on the computer and TV all the time. We need to take some time out. I like to personally do this while I'm sleeping because there's nobody around. I could focus really well, and actually right before I go to sleep. And I could go to bed an hour early and do this type of focus work. Or you could just do it whenever, sitting alone at your couch or on the bed, whatever you need to do. So what we got to do is do less of that, and then we've got to take our attention and focus, and we've got to stand up to and look at the ow. And as you begin to do this, you'll begin to notice that when you stare this thing down and face it in all its glory, and we're not like going into it and becoming this type of thing, we are staring it down, almost creating a resistance. It's almost like a battle inside the body, and it's in your reality, and you want to get it out. So what we do is we use our most powerful force that we have, which is our focus and attention that can actually combat this and hopefully eliminate it. And you notice as you begin to do this, it's not easy at first. When you start to do this, you have to look at it and you have to feel it and you have to go, ow, and you have these realizations as you're doing this. And you begin to notice, as you begin to focus more and more, what happens is you'll begin to notice that this ow inside of you dissipates more and more and more. And then once it's clear, you're like, oh my goodness, that feels good. Let's scan the rest of my body to see what other pain I have and work on that. And this is kind of like spiritual progress in some sort of aspect. Now, I'm going to go a little bit deeper in exactly how to do this in 1 second, but we all know healing happens. For example, many of us have been in a relationship and we got dumped and it was something that was really painful. But over time, we healed and got over it. Now, everybody is different, and they all have different realities, and for some, it takes a lot longer to heal from something like that than others. Now, one thing that we can do is if we do the focus work and face it and look at it for what it is, the more you do that, the quicker you will heal. So you got dumped, how long is it going to take you to heal? The more you look at it and face it, the quicker it's going to be. It could take seriously 5 seconds, 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days, 5 months, 5 years, 5 decades, 5 lifetimes, we don't even know. So instead of keeping stuff buried, we want to look at it in all its glory. So let's go a little bit deeper in how this works. So here we have our own reality, and we are what is inside it, seeing everything. For example, we have 5 senses. We've got touch, taste, smell, sight, and hearing. And we are the one in the middle of it all, experiencing it all. And we also experience other things. So we are the person experiencing everything that goes in through our being. And if we didn't have suffering and misery within our being, we'd be flying all day long, jumping around, dancing with a smile. But that doesn't seem to be the case. People are complaining, we're not always happy, we're frowning, we're always staring, going ow, and stuff like this. So obviously there's pain there. And these aren't from these 5 senses, but there's other stuff going on. So since there is pain in our body, it's not reasons that there's pain. I mean, there are reasons that we make up behind it. Those are thoughts. But this is an actual feeling that you feel. It's ow. So what we have to do is take our attention, we're in the middle of everything, and kind of like search out the ow within your body, your spiritual body, whatever you want to call it, and stare it and find it and get rid of it so it's not there anymore. And then you continue and move on to the next, to the next, to the next. And we're going to go a little bit deeper into this even more to explain exactly how to do this. But one quick thing, I want to kind of discuss boundaries. Why do we allow people to walk all over our boundaries? Why do we let people take advantage of us? What's the problem here? Like, what are we scared of? Like, it's almost like, can I actually say no? What would they think? Or what if they tell other people how bad of a person I am? I'm telling you right now, 10 out of 10 times, this does not happen. It's just a fear. Because deep down, they know that they are unrightfully taking advantage of you and taking your energy. So what is it that we are afraid of? Why can't we say no? What is it? Well, usually it's a bad feeling. Let me give you an example. Let's say you are there and one of these types of people comes up to you and they ask to borrow something. But when they ask, they're asking the question, but they're not really asking. It's almost like they're just ready to take it without any regard with what you have to say, because they've done it over and over a time. And you're sitting there, this like feels like there's one foot in your reality, and all of a sudden you're pinned in a corner, it feels like, and you're just like, ow, and you're just sitting there like, okay, just in your mind, take it, get away, I just don't want to feel this, take it and get out of here. This feeling that you're going through right now is you're giving your energy away. Your energy is being drained and they're taking it. And this is no good, because they're the type of person who's just going to blow it and not use it for good. You know what I'm talking about here. So what we've got to do is stand up for ourselves and do the focus work. So now all of a sudden, one of these people comes up to you and asks you to borrow something. All of a sudden you're feeling we got to do the focus work, stare at this thing and just be like, no, you're being infiltrated right now. No, I'm not going to give my energy away. Just like you say no. And at first they might test you. They might be like, no, like I've never heard her say this before. Like this whole entire energy swing thing is going on, and it's like everybody. It's almost kind of like a battle in some sort of aspect. And you're just like, no. You stand strong. You say no, and then every single time, what happens is because they're unrightfully taking advantage of you, all of a sudden they become bashful, and they're like, oh my God, sorry. Like they've been caught red-handed. This is what is happening. So I know many of us have loved ones. It could be your mother, it could be your father, it could be a brother or sister, or one of your best friends who is doing this to you, and you don't want to hurt them, and that's extremely understandable. And it's not like we don't want to give, we just don't want to be taken advantage of anymore and losing our spiritual energy in this process. So a more clear and like easy, gentle way to do this type of thing is you can be kind of like, no, you know what, this doesn't feel good to me. But you can do this, this, and this, but no, this doesn't feel good to me, but this does. It's almost like setting your boundaries. And at first, when you do this for the first time, when you think, no, it seems like one of the most craziest things in the world. Like it's too painful. It's almost like the anticipation would be too much, because you know one of these people are coming to your house and you're nervous, you're sweating, you're shaking, but you're ready to do this. So it seems like forever and eternal. But when the actual moment comes, when you say no to somebody, or for any sort of aspect, it's almost like, it's just moments, seconds, 30 seconds. It's saying no, and they say no, it's done. But it seems eternal because you're standing up in the midst of it. This is life. This is like energies of both good and bad. You are keeping your stance, and you are not going to be taken advantage of more and not going to have your energy drained. And this is like what we want to be facing. And then when it's gone, it's gone. And you actually come out of it with more energy. And then you'll have more power the next time. And then it just becomes easier and easier and easier over time. I mean, the second time you might be like, well, it'll feel very liberating, but the second time it still might also be difficult. 2 years from now, it might still be difficult, but after time, when you finally realize that, come on, this is crazy, it just becomes easy. Like, oh, no, you can say no all day long. So creating boundaries and protecting our reality from energy drain is pretty critical for spiritual growth. And what I love about the raw food diet, if you do this, you automatically get more focus. It's almost like you get more spiritual energy, and it's automatic. Now, a whole foods diet, this also happens, just not as extreme. But the issue is, most people don't succeed on an improved diet, especially a raw food diet. Why is this? Well, for example, All of a sudden you go on a 100% raw food diet, you feel great at first, but then all of a sudden you go through withdrawals and the cravings pop in. And all of a sudden you just can't even, you're not even there anymore. It's almost like this crazy animalistic being of yours wants pizza. That's all it can think about is pizza. You are smelling pizza and you can taste it and you're salivating and there's no pizza around to be seen. You are starving and there's nothing that you can eat on your current diet that is going to quench that hunger. Nothing. You can fill your stomach up to this big and you are just freaking out here. Now, if you're not going to focus here, then you're a sitting duck. So, for example, what a person can do when they improve their diet, this focus work is critical. All of a sudden, you're sitting there, you are starving, wanting food, and all of a sudden you start to focus and you start to look. Okay, whoa, I am really hungry. This feeling of hunger, wow, that's just kind of like my stomach shrinking. And I actually have more energy right now with this feeling. Wow, I could actually get used to this. This is such a trip. There is no pizza around, but I smell it. My salivary glands are pouring right now, and there's nothing. This is amazing. All of a sudden, you begin to get control of it. And with all of these, since we're eating only raw food, we're not covering up our emotional issues with food anymore. So all of a sudden, that comes right in front of your face. And if you're not focusing, you're a sitting duck, and you're not going to succeed on your diet. Doing this focus work is critical for healing on a physical, emotional, and spiritual level. So let's go a little bit deeper in how to do this focus work. So here we are. We've got 5 senses. We're in the middle of it all. You know what? Let's talk about how to heal a physical degenerative disease with this focus work. Let's say you have breast cancer or colon cancer or an ulcer or something like this. So what we can do is take our focus and attention and look at the point of physical injury and pain. So for example, usually let's say you have colon cancer and you're lying in bed and this is a very scary thing. Your life is on the line here. Usually you feel this pain and you're like, oh my goodness, this is just like one of the worst possible things. It like reminds you of what is going on and you're lying in bed going 100 miles per hour, tossing and turning and kind of like freaking out by the situation, thinking in your mind, what can you do? What can you do? Your mind is just going through loops and you're not even here present. You just feel this pain every once in a while and it's kind of like, ow. So what we can do is we could take our focus and attention and stare at the physical point of injury, the pain, the ow, and stare at it. Now, a real quick example of what this can do is, let's take yoga for example. Let's say a person, a yogi, goes into a yoga stretch and they are sitting like this. And all of a sudden they go into the stretch and it feels really good. They usually do stretches for minutes sometimes to go really, really deep. And they're going into this stretch and they feel it. And they're going deeper and deeper and deeper slowly, you know what I mean? And they've got their focus and attention on the stretch, the feeling of it. Everything feels really good. And then all of a sudden they're at a deep point and all of a sudden they come across stuck energy. And it's like, it's almost like really intense energy, but they still have their focus and attention looking at the stretch. And this energy is going so crazy, it's almost like overcoming their being. It's like sitting there, and then all of a sudden they start to cry because it's so intense, but they still stick there with all of their attention. People doing yoga are always crying. And then all of a sudden it just gets more intense, and all of a sudden this big envelope of energy just overpours them as they stare at it, and then all of a sudden the energy is cleared. And then they sit there in that stretch and could go deeper and deeper and deeper with a smile for as long as they want, because they've cleared that energy. So now, the same thing can be done with healing from a degenerative disease. So let's say you have this ulcer that's sitting right here, or colon cancer. You're sitting there at night, your mind is spinning, you're in pain. And all of a sudden we're like, nope, we're going to take our focus and attention and look at the ow. Oh man, now you're looking at it. This is like real. This is like painful. I'm looking at the pain of this physical injury. Got a hair in my mouth. I'm looking at the pain of this physical injury. This is, ow, oh my goodness, I might die. All of a sudden, like there's this feeling of energy, this stuck energy, which is the root of the disease. And you're staring at the physical point of injury. This energy is coming up, and all of a sudden, you're just still staring at it, though. And all of a sudden, it becomes so intense. You're like, you start crying. You might die. This energy is like coming over you, and you're still staring, though, because you want to live, and you are staring at this physical point of injury, like you're healing it with your attention. And you're staring at this thing and staring at this thing, and then all of a sudden, it gets even more and more intense, and then this envelope of crazy energy comes over your being, and you've cleared the energy. And now you can look at this physical point of injury, this colon cancer or breast cancer, whatever you're staring at, with a smile and acceptance. I am alive. I am excited. I'm not dead right now. I could do so much in the next 2 years. I'm going to do this and this and this. And you're sitting there looking at this owl with a smile in bed for the first time. You get to fall asleep in peace as you just stare at this. You have cleared the energetic aspect of this disease, and now physical healing can happen. Now, this is an ongoing thing. If someone has a serious degenerative disease like this, it's really good to take care of yourself and not work it if you have the blessing and ability to do so. But this is an ongoing thing. So all of a sudden you clear this, you fall asleep, you wake up, you go to work, all these different things happen, and then at night we got to do the process again. We've got to keep clearing it. And since this is like a serious degenerative disease, this is a lot of emotional issues from your entire life of decades. So this isn't like, might not be an overnight thing. There's layers here, layers of energy. We've got to keep hitting it and keep hitting it. And the first night you did this, it might have taken you an hour and a half of focus work in order to clear the energy like you did to have a smile. And then the second night, it might even have taken you 2 hours. But then the third night, it only took you 45 minutes. And then the fourth night, and then it gets less and less and less to where you do this more and more often. You gain more energy and more strength and the know-how and ability to where if you all of a sudden feel it, it just takes a minute, seconds. It's just automatic. It's just like a buildup over time. This focus work is critical, again, for physical, emotional, and spiritual health. This focus work is living your life. It's living more life. It's living in the moment. It is the search for God. I know. See, a lot of people, they actually think for spiritual growth that this type of focus work or meditation is like the number one thing that they can do. And this is actually practically nothing for that sort of thing. It's like nothing compared to what you can possibly do for spiritual growth. See, one of the reasons why people think meditation or this focus work, there's a difference between the two, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Why they think this is the number one thing that they can do for spiritual growth is because things happen when they do that. For example, people might actually see things, they might feel vibrations, they might get their third eye vibrating for a second, or they might actually get a glimpse of this hologram. But in actuality, you are capped off with meditation in this focus work. You can build up a certain amount of energy, but you can't go beyond this door. There's a door right here. And this door can only be opened by one, and that is the Creator. And so what a lot of these meditators believe is they're going through all of this spiritual growth from doing meditating all day, when in fact it's almost kind of just like they're being fooled into thinking that they are. For example, there was someone who wanted to stay here on our land, and the husband needed to have a room to where he could meditate all day and look at a wall. That's what he does for a living. That's what he does all day long. And you know what he does? He just sits there and he's like staring at the wall, trying everything in his power to get kind of like these frills of like seeing this hologram. And as soon as like he finally gets it out after hours of doing it, and he's like seeing what's going on, seeing energy or whatever he's doing, this is like a dangerous time, because if like the wife were to come in at that point, it's probably grounds for divorce, because you don't interrupt this type of thing, because you could like ruin everything. And what they're feeling are these frills and excitement and seeing things, and they're going out of their own reality, out of their own boundary. And what happens is that feeling and all these different things that you're going after, your energy is actually being drained and you're actually going backwards. So what happens is they're going in these loops, and only one can open this door. And then it's just endless of what the possibilities are. Let's talk about good versus evil. We all know to do good. It's obvious. You know, we're not going to go murder someone or get in a fight or go rob a bank or steal something. Well, for one, these are all physical acts that we can get caught in and go to jail or just be labeled as a bad person or whatever. But there's an entire whole different aspect of good versus evil that nobody knows what you're doing on the inside except you. And of course, one other, which is the Creator. So you may say that you're all about good and helping people, but you're really about fame, greed, and money. Or here's another example. For example, we're not going to cheat on our wife or husband because if we get caught, that's a very bad thing for the same exact reason. That's a physical aspect. Now let's look at this other aspect. Let's say you're a married person and you're walking down the street, you're a girl or a guy, and all of a sudden the opposite sex all of a sudden comes up to you and comments at you and gives you the most incredible comment that you've ever had. And all of a sudden you are just like, whew, all of a sudden like hormones are coming through your body. This is just like a physical reaction and you're just like flustered and you don't know what to do. Now, you have a choice at this moment in time. And if we do the focus work, we can focus and be like, okay, no, I'm married, and what I'm going to do is not think about this and just go on and be with what I have. I'm not going to commit adultery in my heart in some sort of aspect. So, or you could take the other path of like, oh, that felt so good. You let the hormones continue to go. You keep taking it, you feel it, and you're just loving it. And you're walking away now, and all of a sudden you're looping the conversation in your head over and over again. You're fantasizing, you're imagining, and you're going through these tingly vibrations of feels and feelings, and they feel so good. You know what's happening right now? Your energy is being drained, and you're being 100% completely toyed with at this moment in time. You are losing energy. See, what people don't understand is we all want to experience bliss. We don't want to be suffering. But we don't understand what bliss is. We mistake it with these frills of life, of, oh, that feels so good. How can I not do this? That's not bliss. This is your energy being drained. And at some point, you'll learn that you're going like this until you get it. Like, oh, I don't want to give my energy away. Bliss is something completely different. It's not the frills that you experience through things like that. It is void of misery, void of pain. We all have pain and misery in our being. And when for the first time you experience peace, I'm not talking peace, I'm talking real peace, where you've done that spiritual work and you have cleaned out everything. There's no frills and excitement of no, this is the best bliss. Peace. Finally, I have peace. The best thing you can possibly have. That is bliss. And this has nothing to do with religion. There are many people that go to church, they do their things, they look like they're very religious people, but, in their heart, they're fantasizing about other people's husbands. They're doing all these other things. They're exalting themselves. They're all about the money, greed, and fame when they're saying they're not. These are things that are happening inside that most people can't see. Many people can sense them. But yeah. And who's the determiner of evil? Man? If that were the case, I'm one of the most wicked and evil men in the world. I've had 3 petitions written against me. No. Okay, here's one critical thing that we got to always work on, and that's our intent. What is intent? Well, for example, like I would say a few months ago, maybe 6 months ago, me, my daughter, and my wife were having lunch. And all of a sudden the dog comes up, it's like wagging his tail, it wants to look up. And Araya, who was like 2 at the time, all of a sudden puts her hand in my food and throws it on the floor to the dog. And I'm like, oh, that was my lunch. Oh. But I know that my daughter's intent was pure. She didn't mean to hurt me. She just wanted to give the dog some food. Now that's pure intent. But if someone were to come up to me, who's an older person, and their intent was to take this food and throw it on the floor and look at me in the face like this, you go, Now that's probably evil intent, as you would mostly imagine. And working on our intent is one of the most critical things that we can possibly do. What I'm going to do now is give you the number one key that you can do for spiritual growth. This one thing can bring you eons, years, decades, lifetimes further than you have ever thought imaginable spiritually. You guys ready for this? Let's do it. All right. Up until this moment, I have done this, this, and this. I had no idea that you were watching every last thing that I did and do. I had no clue that this was impacting my spiritual growth. I am sorry. From this moment forward, here, and here, I am going to do this, this, and this. This is the most important thing to me in my life. Nothing is more important than this. Watch, you will see. I'm going to prove this to you. Watch. From now on, I am doing this, this, and this, and there is no stopping me. I guarantee it. I am so 100% sure. Please consider me for moving forward in the most gentle and easy possible way. All right. If you do this, you have the ability to move forward eons and eons and actually perform it. Now, depending on who we are and what we've done in the past, many of us have a more difficult path than others in the future, while others have an easier path. Now, although if your path, it still may be difficult on what you've got to go through. However, doing this can take you decades beyond, eons beyond you can fathom imagine, and it would be a lot easier. And for others of us who have an easier path, it might be as simply as doing this and choosing to move forward, and then done. Okay, now that we've discussed the most important thing and that some of us have chosen to do this, there are certain things that we need to know that almost seem unfathomable to us. Probably the number one thing is all thoughts are not our own. All thoughts are not our own. How can that be? That's just crazy. Well, let me give you an example. Let's say you're hanging around at your house and you're not focusing that well, and all of a sudden you get this thought, desire, and urge to take the scissors and stab the dog. Now, obviously, we're not going to act upon that. Well, at least most of us won't react upon that. But obviously, we know that that was not our thought. We would not purposefully decide to choose to take the scissors and stab the dog. So there are always these foreign thoughts flowing around our being on an ongoing basis. And this is why it's critical to always work on our intent. For example, you're all about helping people, and all of a sudden a desire for fame, greed, and money comes in. You're like, no, I'm all about helping people here. I'm doing the focus work. I'm doing my intent. I'm working on my intent. This is critical, is working on your intent for progress. And the reason for all of this resistance is to train us to be righteous. And one of the biggest traps that people fall into where they just don't move forward after hearing something like this is, for example, they make this commitment and they do it. And all of a sudden, they're in the midst of all these foreign thoughts, and then all of a sudden this evil thought comes in and you think like you just did wrong here. And you're like, oh no, I totally screwed up. I'm sorry. And then you start to go into insecurity, and it's like this insecurity feeling. If you feel into that, that's ow. It's like this ow right here. And then you start looping insecurity, and you're in this like vibration of insecurity, and what has happening right now is your energy is being drained. And most people don't get out of that. Of course, we're going to have instances like this. We got to be like, sorry, let's try again. But the trap is to fall into the insecurity. Now, what he sees is our pure heart and intent and our effort in trying to move forward and doing our best to shun all of these things such as greed and stuff like that. So those things aren't us, but what he sees is what we're doing, not to get thinking, associate with that with us. This focus works helps us discern the difference between our real thoughts and these foreign thoughts that are coming through. So being on this path is kind of watching like a hawk everything that is going through your being. It's being responsible for everything you vibrate. And I know I said that this focus work wasn't nearly as important as some other things, which is, it's true, but it's actually extremely important, because how would you be able to do all this? This focus work is like doing the work. So let me give you an example of this with the focus work. Let's say you're driving in your car, all by yourself, nobody is around, and you're just driving down the street and you're just like, oh, this sucks. Life just sucks. You're in this pain and misery. You're just like, you're looping. How can you make your life better? How can you make your life better? And just this morning when you were driving, Beyonce was on the radio and you were sitting there dancing, having a good time, loving it. But now you're just like, changing the radio station. You're looking for that same Beyonce song. That same Beyonce song comes on, but you're still miserable. Nothing works. And you just turn off the radio as you sulk. The next time this happens, celebrate. Because you now have the ability and potential to prove yourself. This is great and exciting. So, when you are sometimes like hanging out and all of a sudden this hazy fog of energy overcomes you and it's just so easy to like zone out and just like stare at a wall or something, and you just sit there in this frequency of blah, blah, blah. And if someone were to look at you right now, they would think that you look like a dead corpse looking into outer space, just like it's painful to resist this, but we need to, because what's happening right now is your energy is being drained again. So let's say you're driving in your car and you're hanging out there, and all of a sudden that big cloud of energy comes over you, and we always obey to it because we've been obeying to it for eons, and it's almost like a reflex. It's almost like you almost feel like you don't even have the ability to disobey it. And it's almost like this magnetic pull just bringing you. You're in this misery, and it brings you into this state of misery where you just are sitting there and you're not feeling what's going on, but you're thinking in your mind all these different issues with your life. Oh, this sucks, this sucks, this sucks. But what's really happening, if you were to like focus, you would notice that you're in this frequency that you have just been brought into and your mind is trying to fix it, which it can't do. So what is happening right here is your energy is being drained. So what we got to do is stand, do the focus work, and be like, no, and all of a sudden you're just like fighting this feeling of the feeling that makes you go into this zone space. You're like, no, and it's so unnatural to you because it's been the reflex for so long, and it's like this magnetic pull, and you're going against the magnetism, and you are just like sitting there fighting and fighting and fighting, and this is life again. It feels like pain, but this is what we're living for, and it's exciting, and you're sitting there, and all of a sudden after just moments, you did it. It's not there anymore. You're driving, you're focusing. You did it. You were not subject to that energy drain. Now, going through the process of the battle, your energy is not being drained. This is fine. It's going into the frequency and staying there. So you battle it and you're like, yes, you're focusing. I'm going to drive and feel great. And then all of a sudden, all that feeling comes again because we have a short-term memory. And all of a sudden, it starts to bring you down. No! And you stay above it, and you all of a sudden are not subject to the energy drain, and now you have more power to not be affected by these things. And that process of where you are battling, and it seems eternal because it's pain, and we don't want to deal with it, but this is life, and it seems eternal, like it just seems like this impossible feat. But again, it literally is only seconds, minutes, and then you're over it, and it's done. And then it becomes easier the next time if you continue this process. Okay, let's talk about the sixth sense. A lot of people, they hear about the sixth sense and they're just like, that is just unfathomable to me. Maybe some people experience the sixth sense, but I never experience it. Well, in fact, you are experiencing it every moment of your life, but you just choose to ignore it. What is the sixth sense? Let me explain this. So again, we have five senses. We've got touch, the touch, the sight, the sound, the smell, the taste. We're in the middle of experiencing all of this. However, there is more that we experience beyond the five senses. And anything that you experience that is not the fifth sense is, guess what? The sixth sense. It's almost like an entire another reality that we don't pay attention to, when it's actually more real than you can possibly imagine. We just can't really see it. So let me give you an example. Let's say you're hanging out at a party, having a good time with some friends, maybe you had a drink or something, and all of a sudden, you turn your head and you look, and there's that guy. This is the guy that if you talk to him, you're like, if you allowed him to, you would talk to him all night long for the rest of the night, because it's almost like this energy drain where he wants to stay with you and he doesn't want to let you go and stuff like this. And all of a sudden you look this way and you get eye contact with him and you're like, oh crap. And all of a sudden he's making his way over here, and all of a sudden you turn around and there he is. Hi. Now, all of a sudden what he's doing is speaking to you. And in your head, you're in your sixth sense in some sort of aspect, and you're thinking to yourself, what can I do to, in the most polite way, stop this conversation and get away? Because it's painful. I feel it. You're sitting here. Physically, what you see is you're looking at this person speaking, going, you're not hearing what they're saying. You hear a blah, 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 blah. It's almost like this frequency. And then all of a sudden, you feel this like, ow, down here. And you don't even realize you're doing this, but you're protecting yourself through reflex that you don't notice you're doing, because you've been doing this for eons also. So all of a sudden your attention is down here on this ow, and you're dealing with this thinking, how can you get out of here? And then all of a sudden you feel something somewhere else, and then you're kind of like, you're like focusing over here. All of these things, what you're doing right now is you're moving your spiritual body, and you've been doing it forever, and you don't even realize you're doing this to protect yourself because it's a reflex. So the goal is that you're trying to get away from him, and all of a sudden he's like doing this more, and he's blah, 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 and you have to go to like protect yourself. You don't even know what you're doing. This is something else that you just did that you don't see what you're doing, but you did it. And then all of a sudden you finally get away. So this type of thing is the sixth sense. And if we start to do the focus work and pay attention more, this reality will begin to open to us. Another example would be, let's say you're all by yourself and you're walking down the street, and then all of a sudden there's another person coming your way. And all of a sudden you feel them, you feel the energy. You think it's just you, but if you're paying attention and focusing, you'll feel everything. And so many things happen just by that, just by a walking pass. For example, if you're a girl and you might want to look kind of good and kind of like magnetize the guy to look at you if you think maybe he's cute or something. Or maybe you're the type of person who wants everyone to look at you, because when they do that, and you can actually, unfortunately, take some energy from them, and it's very painful for the guy. I've been in that situation many times, but they're just like, and it's kind of like you're toying with them in some sort of aspect. But regardless, and that results in pain for you later, which you don't really realize. You're playing. So what's happening is you're feeling each other's spiritual bodies as you go by each other in some sort of aspect. And when you start to pay attention and focus, you'll be able to understand more and more of this. And the best thing that we can possibly do is stay in our own reality and not kind of go out of the boundary to where you're more susceptible to spiritual pain, if that makes sense. To where if you're the guy and you're just like looking at this girl and you bite on that magnetism, because when you go, you feel it. And it's like very hard not to look, if that makes sense. And you go with your spiritual body and you feel it. Guess what? Ow, you're out of your bed. So it's almost like we're trying to like keep it together by focusing and keeping everything together in us. Like pay attention to your reality and everything that is around you through focus without playing and looking at other things. So if you start to pay attention, you'll begin to notice these things. So let's talk about the difference real quick between focus and meditation, because there's a huge difference here. Now, focus is kind of where you put your attention and focus to almost like create this shield of resistance to what I'm calling it battle, to like not let things in, if that makes sense. Now, meditation, on the other hand, what usually happens is you're told to sit like this. Focus. Become one. And you do this, surrender to the world of energy. So what you're doing right now is you are surrendering, and you are an open vessel right now, which is what we don't want. If we were an open vessel, we don't want to go into this misery. That is surrendering to misery. You see what I'm saying here? But when we're focusing, no, that's completely different to meditation. So if meditation is done with the element of focus, then that can be a good thing. So what's our purpose here? Why are we here? What's our purpose? To serve? Serve who? Man? Can you imagine if it was purpose to serve man, you gave everything you had to one of these people that drain your energy, like take advantage of your boundaries? No. Our purpose is to serve the Creator. Me personally, Araya was under 2 years old, and I'm told, go tour. We got to get you touring to teach this type of stuff, teach healing from disease and all that sort of stuff. I go. I mean, it'd be very easy in my life to just be with my 1.5-year-old daughter and my wife and all these other things. But I'm in service, and I do that, and I love it. Don't get me wrong. I wouldn't change the world for it, but that's what we're in service to. And we'll talk a little bit more about this service in a second. But real quickly, I want to talk about the complainer. Many of us know about the complainer. As soon as you come in contact with someone, all of a sudden, they're just like it's really heavy energy, and they're like, oh, my life sucks. This is what happened to me today. Then this happened. Oh, woe is me yesterday. Da, 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 da. And it's almost like this. You don't even want to be around that almost some of the times. It doesn't really feel good. And you can just feel, if you feel the frequency of it, it's like this low, ow, 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 ow. So what is this complainer essentially saying? Who are they complaining to? Are they complaining to you? Did you do this to them? Did their parents do this to them? So when a person complains, who are they complaining to? It can be a complaint. That's what you're complaining to. And that can be a very dangerous thing. The opposite of that is kind of like gratefulness for no matter what you have. So, for example, he might, I don't call the shots here, but he might be like, wow, this person is always in this frequency of complaining over and over again. And he might be like, all right, if I were to give you more right now, this frequency of complaining would not stop. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take something away from you to where all of a sudden you are like, whoa, you might be grateful for what you have, and it might actually change your life around to where you actually change your frequency and that complaining stops. Let's look at the conspiracy guy real quick. Don't get me wrong, we all like a little bit of conspiracy. For example, aliens and the whole 9/11 thing, whatever you want. But then there's the conspiracy guy. You go to a party, and if you allow this guy to speak to you, he will talk about 9/11, conspiracy, and everything under the sun for 5 hours straight, just about this if they want. And if you feel that, that's another ow, like, grr, I'm angry. What are they essentially saying? What they're pretty much saying is, you know what? I don't think that everything you've done here is good. I think that you don't have a reason for it, and quite frankly, I think I can do a better job than you. Big mistake. But on the flip side, you have these people fighting Monsanto, GMOs, and they're winning the battle. What is going on here? If a corporation were to look at these people who have dedicated their lives to doing something like this, it's like, what is going on? What is fueling them? You are poor, you have no money, why are you doing this? Like, what are they thinking? It's almost like they're getting fulfillment in some sort of aspect. Why are they fulfilled? Because they're fulfilling their purpose, which is their service to God, the Creator. Now, some of these people who are fighting Monsanto don't even realize why they're doing it. You can either be consciously serving or unconsciously. Me personally, I like to choose conscious. Let's talk about deceit real quick. And this is kind of like ego in some sort of aspect is related to it a bit. Now, deceit is a lot of these things. We want to go on this path, but we don't even realize what we're doing is evil a lot of the time. And it's very subtle, and you actually convince yourself that you're actually doing good. So it's critical to kind of like pull back and be like, I'm just man, and there's no way I'm as pure as, so there's nothing I can practically, I am evil in some sort of aspect, and I'm going to try my best not to be. Not that you're being evil, it's more of like cunning, which is not necessarily, or something else, but not necessarily that that's evil, but it depends how pure you want to go here and how far you want to go. So let me give you an example. The other day, I have a manager who works in our business, and he takes on a lot of work. And I'm just like, why are you doing so much? You're not the customer service department. Don't deal with this anymore. And he comes to me with customer service questions. I'm like, give it to the customer service manager to come to me. We need to free you up a bit so you can do other things. He's like, okay, let's get this straight. So then all of a sudden I get this Skype from him, or no, an email stating all these different customer service questions he has about B12 patches, this and this. It was like 3 different questions. And so what I write back is I'm like, hey, why are you doing customer service again? And what he does is he tries to be cunning and as fast as possible to protect himself, which is not that big of a deal to me, but I'm just telling him, let's not do customer service. He's saying, oh, there was a walk-in and I needed help at that moment in time. Now, that might have been true for the 3rd question, but the first 2 questions, that wasn't true. And he doesn't realize that I'm kind of clever and I could kind of see the entire picture here. And I know that he's kind of like trying to be deceitful, and he doesn't even realize he's trying to like come up with it, but he's convincing himself this is the truth. And he's being deceitful and he doesn't even realize it. That's why it's always best to like confess instead of like defend. So it's like, he sees everything, and we think we're being clever and good, but in essence, it's almost like, here's the new energy, guys. Nah. This happened the other day with another woman. I saw everything in a situation, and again, I was just like, I didn't even want to like ask her the question of testing her because I knew she was going to lie. So it was almost like, what do? Do I teach her a lesson? And it's almost like the same sort of aspect. He sees everything. So just think about that type of thing. And a lot of you may be thinking like, I want this. Let's do, this is the most important thing to me. But then you're thinking to yourself, oh, my husband, he won't be on board with this. It's like, what am I supposed to do when I have that? Well, this path is a lonely path, and there's actually benefit that your husband or spouse and child actually get from you doing this, even if they choose not to. But this is a very lonely path, and we're going to talk about all this right now. For example, many of you watching this video right now have improved their diets, and all of a sudden now they're a raw foodist, vegetarian, or whatever. And all of a sudden, this is the point where, you know, you lose your family and friends because they all think you're crazy and you can't be social anymore. You can't go to restaurants because every place has meat or this or that. And it's a very lonely path. But we still choose to do it because what's the most important thing to us is us. So kind of one of the next steps is pulling out of that type of thing. For example, you might be at a gathering with friends or family, and then all of a sudden someone starts complaining, and you're like, oh boy, and you feel the ow, and then all of a sudden another family member or a friend comes in there, and they're both saying, oh, I hear you, my life sucks too, and then this is frequency, and they're all just feeding it, and they're losing energy, they're being drained right now. Now, we don't want to like not love these people and be around them and hang around them, but we don't want to like start going in there saying, oh, my life sucks too. Because then you're just being drained also. We want to be looking at the frequency with focus and kind of helping yourself as much as possible, keeping it out of your reality, maybe even helping that by doing that. You don't even realize what you're doing. So it is a very lonely path, but it's the most fulfilling and the least lonely because on a human superficial level, it seems like that, but in essence, what you have is something that's there, and if you know it's there, you are completely fulfilled regardless, even if the closest person to you is not into this type of thing. And when you work upon yourself, automatically the other people around you grow spiritually. This is crazy. For example, let's say there was one day where you only got 3 hours sleep and you are cleaning the house, you haven't had anything to eat, you went in the refrigerator, what you wanted wasn't there, and you are starving and you are pissed off. Now you could do one of two things. Your daughter's sitting there hanging out on the floor with you, and all of a sudden you could just be bitter and angry and this sucks and you're doing this vibration, life sucks and I want to get past it. Or it can be like this. This is like a game. I got to finish cleaning the entire house. I got to do this, this, and this. And I'm so excited because when I'm done, I'm going to the market. I'm going to go get the most amazing food and it's going to be so good. And then I get to sleep for it's the weekend, 10 hours if I want. This is like the best game in the world. And all of a sudden the child, if you were like ranting and raging, it's almost like they're feeling that. They feel it. And they're just like, I don't even want to like be around, but I've got to be, they're susceptible to it and they're dealing with it, and that's what they become used to, and then when they're older, that's what they're going to vibrate. But all of a sudden, you're changing it into this fun game or whatever, the child lights up with excitement, with a smile, is helping you clean, and you're having a ball, you're laughing and having a good time. What is happening is, you are doing the focus work, and you're not allowing all of the negative energies in, and they see that if they continue, your husband and daughter or whatever, family members are doing this, and you're holding your stance of this focus, all of a sudden they're going to be like, wait a minute, this person is like not unhappy like we are. And they all of a sudden realize, they feel everything. And it's almost like what happens is, when you stop draining your energy, you get more energy because it's not being drained. And then also, if you do this really well, you can be gifted even more to where you have a greater impact on everything around you. To where it's almost like you, from doing this and not going into these energies and feeling that it's almost like your husband is part of you. So it's almost like you're even working on that stuff and in your child too. And when you change, automatically everybody else changes. And also, all of a sudden they'll be feeling everything, and they'll also feel like, wait a minute, when I do that, there's this ow, and she's not doing it anymore. She's not experiencing that ow anymore. And all of a sudden, everybody automatically just grows spiritually together. So real quickly, what I want to do, I want to go a little bit deeper into all this fun stuff. But I also want to talk about how the 100% raw food diet can actually be a powerful doorway to this whole entire spiritual thing. And I'm not saying you don't have to do a raw food diet in order to make this happen. It can happen many different methods. Like, for example, yoga is a good doorway, meditation is a doorway. There's all these different doorways. I just know that the raw food diet is a very powerful one because of what happened to me. About 17 years ago, I went on a 100% raw food diet. And when I did this, I felt like crap. I had a runny nose, I had zits all over my face. I was working at MTV Networks, getting up 5 times in a row to go to the bathroom. It was just very uncomfortable and I wasn't happy. And I met these colon therapists who got me to do a colonic. And when I did this colonic, I couldn't believe what happened. It like took all the withdrawals and the toxicity away. My zits went away, my runny nose went away. I was flying, I slept really good, and I was feeling extremely well. But then after about 10 days, all of a sudden my zits would come back, I wouldn't feel good again, so I would get another colonic. And probably for the first 8 months of being raw, I did it every 10 days. I was addicted at the time. So I was sitting there, I couldn't believe what was happening. I would like breathe in through my nose after a long time of doing this, and all of a sudden air and oxygen would go straight into my lungs without any obstruction. I've never felt anything like this before. It was almost like I was floating. I felt incredibly good. And I was like, wow, what is going on here? And you know when you go on a 100% raw food diet, you lose your family and your friends and they're just completely gone. Well, since I was, people at work thought I was crazy. So my only friends were pretty much these colon therapists. So I'm sitting there hanging out, getting colonic, listening to everything, and I hear them talk about doing psyllium and bentonite. And they're just like, oh, no. That stuff is just too intense. You take a tablespoon of this concoction together with psyllium and bentonite, and what it does inside your system, it turns into like this, and you poo out that. It's just too intense. I don't even like playing with that. But the reason why people do it, they were saying, is because it helps remove mucoid plaque. So I'm like listening and I'm hearing what they're saying, and all of a sudden I hear someone talk about the crazy Bernard psyllium bentonite cleanse, where you eat no food for 7 days and you do psyllium and bentonite like this 5 times a day, and you eat no food, and what comes out of you every day is like 1, 2, 3, and they're like, I would never do that. And I'm like, they were like, it would remove all the mucoid plaque. I'm like, give it to me. What is this? I'm an extremist. I'm going all the way, sign me up. I quit my job. I paid a buttload of money to make this happen, and I do it. I'm on the table. Also on top of that, you're supposed to do a colonic in the morning and in the evening of every day of this cleanse in order to keep it all moving through. You won't get nearly as much of the mucoid plaque out as if you would have. My colon therapist could not believe what was coming out of me, this black stuff, and they were just like, what is going on here? And I'm sitting there like, whatever, I'm just doing my thing. And when I finished this cleanse, now keep in mind, I was on a raw food diet for 8 months straight. I was young, like 22 or 24, I don't remember. I was juicing every day, doing colonics every 10 days. And all of a sudden, when I got all that psyllium bentonite out of me, that night, I started to feel something that I've never experienced before in my life. I started to get this vibration right here, and I had no idea what was going on. Crazy things started to happen to me. I was like sitting there and I would like see things I've never seen before. Like, for example, have you ever been hanging out and you look at the sky and it's completely blue, and all of a sudden you see like little energy things like moving? You're like, is that part of my eyes or something? When it looks like a dead TV screen that has snow on it, and you just see that up in the sky. You're like, what is going on here? I'd be hanging out and I would just see things move by focusing or doing attention or whatever. All of a sudden, I was like, what is going on here? I would tell family and friends that I had this like vibration going on right here, and they just thought I was absolutely crazy, malnourishing myself, and I was getting these tingly vibrations. And I'm sitting like, what is going on here? I was like, I went to the bookstore, and all of a sudden I learned about all these different things, such as meditation, and I started to meditate more, and I began to realize when I started to do this focus, this would vibrate even heavier and stronger, and I was like, what is going on here? I started learning about the chakra system, and then I'm like, wait a minute, this must be the third eye chakra. So I go to my brother, I'm like, this is the third eye chakra I've been talking about. I'm not crazy. Big mistake. Third eye chakra, Matt, yeah. So I'm like experiencing all of these different things. And for a guy like me, I was like really happy. I was on this new high that I've never experienced before. So, you know, like the typical newbie of the 100% raw food diet guy saying, for happiness, you need to do this. I later learned that is a lot of foolishness, but I was experiencing this. I was absolutely happy about it. But what happens is when you do this and you start to feel all really good, all of a sudden this becomes your everyday norm. And when that becomes your everyday norm, it's kind of like, okay, you're used to it. You forget what you used to felt like, and it's just like, okay, this is just life. And then all of a sudden it's like, you want more because it's capped off. You can't go any further. Whereas like the spiritual aspect is never ending. So a lot of raw food eaters, they go crazy because they're like, oh, I'm not feeling good anymore, when they're feeling just the same as they were. And they start having to experience the other bad stuff to not feel good anymore. And they run to all these issues, mental issues. And then this is why a lot of raw food eaters are crazy. So I'm experiencing all of this happening. I learned, all of a sudden I became extremist with meditation because I'm experiencing like this vibrating more. I started getting so extreme with it, I started to like fall asleep meditating, aware. And it felt like I was going through astral projection is what they call it. I was like leaving my body, all sorts of crazy things. I felt like I had spirit encounters, but I don't want to get too much into that. It was a little bit crazy. So the point of all this was I started to realize, as I got extreme into meditation, why is there misery in my being? So when I was sitting there miserable in my car, I'm like, why is this? Why aren't I in bliss and happy? So this is when I started, what is that ow? So I started to focus, and I started to look and what is going on here and stand up to it and face it. And I began to realize it started to dissipate and all of these different things. This was like the path I started to go on. What is the third eye? Everybody has it, they just don't really feel it yet. And I'll explain why in a second, but what I feel like, for example, right now when I first started experiencing this, it's almost like this magnets opposing each other. That like feeling right there, you could feel it in there and it feels really good. And I could kind of like give a visual of it. If you were to look at like a tiger looking over a mountain into like the wild with just pure awareness like this, that's the picture of it. That's what that feels like. So we all have it. It's just that we don't necessarily open it and experience it. And what happens is, what this is a result of is once you build up your spiritual body with energy and you don't let it drain and it becomes fully filled with energy, all of a sudden you are like overflowing. And the third eye is kind of like a universal energy antenna, you can call it, to where you can actually start to feel it and all these different things. But most of us, we continually allow our energy to get drained over and over again. How do we do this? How do we allow our energy to continue to go down like this? Well, we've talked about it many times today. For example, maybe you give it away by allowing people to walk all over your boundaries. Or maybe you like to play with all of those frills, like you like to meditate and look at this hologram that you're not supposed to be looking at, and you get these feelings, your energy's being drained. Or maybe you're doing that fantasizing thing where it feels so good, your energy's being drained. Or maybe you're going into insecurity all the time. Or maybe you're complaining, and that, remember we were talking about that frequency, that was our. Maybe you're that conspiracy guy who's like, and anger, and then you're in these frequencies. Or maybe you allow misery to take your energy all the time and you're not focusing. So we got to stop that in order to not let our spiritual energy drain. So what I'm going to do is just sum it all up in one simple sentence for spiritual growth and healing. The first thing is to make this commitment. And then we perform this commitment. And then we don't allow our energy to drain, and then it can start to build up. Another quick one that allows our energy to drain is the entire pride aspect. For example, maybe you're in a relationship and an argument happens. This is a very common thing to do that's very painful. All of a sudden the tiff happens and it's like, ow. But then if it accelerates, it goes, ow, ow. The feeling, forget the reasoning and the conversation that's going on. Who cares about that? That's just minds fighting each other. Ah, right here where it escalates to the most highest point is so painful. This is where divorces happen. This is where breakups happen all the time. And it's best to catch it down, down here. And what's happening is this entire time, in this entire frequency of your energy is being drained. And the higher it is, the more energy is being drained. So it's always best to catch it down here and to not be necessarily right. Again, we're always in our minds thinking that's the most important part, but we've got to start feeling instead of thinking, because the feeling is what's really happening. The words are just things to make that happen. So you can lose your energy. And when you do this, when you're arguing, you and your partner's energy is being drained along with your child because they're all part of you. The very first time I finally realized this, and I'm like, wait a minute, I don't want to go there, was a very big day. All of a sudden, okay, you're right. The reasoning didn't care. And then it was gone, and then we were just playing recently, right after that. And this isn't something to utilize against your partner or something like with an egotistical thing. Like you see this happening, and then all of a sudden you pull out and you see them go up, and you're like, ha, ha, ha. Same thing, you're both being drained, but now you're what you have inside of you is that pride feeling. That's worse than this. So it's like, you do it in love. And you will even realize that it was probably you the entire time. And when you pull out, they didn't even want to do this. They just stop. It was all you the whole entire time. So what we want to do is make the commitment, perform the commitment, not allow our energy to drain. So here I was experiencing all this on the beginning of my path, and I was heavy into meditation at the time. And I'm sitting there driving in pure misery, and I'm like, what is this? I wanted to get down to the bottom of this. Why is there pain here? So I started to put my focus and attention to find it and look at it and stand up to it and do that. And then as you begin to do this more and more, and you clear a lot of this nonsense energy away, you'll begin to realize there's more layers of more subtle things. It's like, I'm looking for even more subtle things where it's more hard to notice. And I'd be sitting there driving in my car, and it'd be almost like this thing right here where I would just like sit with it, and it'd be like this pain. Why would I want to go into that? But it's almost like electrocuting it. And then it's like getting it out or something. I don't even know. But it's just like we pretty much got to remove all these things in order to not allow our energy to drain. And a lot of us think that we actually see what is in front of us, when in actuality, we don't see much at all of what is really there. And that might sound crazy because you're sitting there in front of your computer, you see your computer screen and you see me right here, but do you really see me? Let me give you an example. Remember Pixar came out with the first cartoon of its time called Toy Story. And you're sitting there and you're looking at this new cartoon where you see this, like, these figures. It looks so real, and you see this baby with a rattle, and you're just like tripping out on it. You're like, how do they do that? Your focus is totally in there, enjoying this. It almost like feels good. You're just like, it's like a psychedelic cartoon. Now all cartoons are like, even the ones on TV are of that level, and you know, this is capped off. Well, the spiritual isn't. Everything's capped off at some point, except for that one thing. But regardless, you're just like tripped out. So if you could see what was actually in front of you, you would be, whoa, in this TV screen, I've got these arms and hands, and it's interactive. It's like space, and I feel things. Oh my goodness, look at this sleeve and the creases. Oh my God, it's making like little light of it. It's like such, my God, look at this. This is a psychedelic, trippy world that is just amazing. And if we make the commitment, perform it, not allow our energy to be drained, we may be gifted more life to where we get to actually experience more of this. And you actually get to see more life. And this isn't something you attain yourself or do the focus work. It's gifted to you. However, it's not going to be gifted to you unless you do everything in your power to do it. And when it's gifted, you're set there. And then it's a whole other reality. And then it's just never ending. That's like what we're going for. And me personally, I feel unworthy for it. I feel so blessed and just so much is the number one thing we can do. Trust me. All right, guys, I think we've, in all three videos, have covered everything. We've covered the physical through eating healthily and nourishment, and now the spiritual aspects. And this is Matt Monarch, rocking the raw food world, excited about the future, excited to get this video out. And we'll see you next time at the Raw Food World TV show.